Welcome, everybody, to another Firehouse Table Talk. I'm your host, Scott Jones, and this is being brought to you from our Sober Life Studios and sponsored by One Brother, One Sister. One Brother, One Sister, nonprofit organizations that brings training in mental health, addictions, and certainly trauma to all first responders, fire, police, medical, and to our veterans as well. And we do this at no cost to them. We count on your donations and the donations of organizations so that we can continue to do this work. If you'd like to know more, get involved, or to make a donation, any amount is needed. So thank you for that. OneBrotherOneSister.com. That's where you can do that. And that also makes it possible for us to keep bringing you these podcasts and learning about our first responders. And on this show, certainly our fire and rescue workers. So much that we don't know about them. You're not going to learn it from a TV show. I thought I knew everything from Squad 51 or Emergency, whatever that show was. And I thought I knew everything about fire service. And the only thing I learned was that no matter what happens to you, the hospital was going to tell you to do an IV with lactated ringers. And I don't even know what that is. So we don't know anything. We need to talk to our heroes, the people out there doing things for us every day, and find out what we can do for them. I encourage everybody, if you see a vet, if you see a firefighter, if you see a police officer, take a moment, stop and thank them for what they do. It does mean the world. And I know for a fact there is not a police station or a firehouse that would turn down fresh baked cookies. So bring them on, people. Bring them on. We're going all the way out. We are, I think he's in California, but I might have that wrong. He'll tell us. But this is Jeff Dill, and I'm just really excited to get started with him because he's got so much great information for us today. Jeff, how are you?
Well, I'm doing well, Scott. How about yourself?
You know what? It's a great day. It's a little hot, because, I'm down in South Florida.
Right.
And it's just we've had, I think, 40 days in a row of excessive heat warnings. So I guess it would have been like being a firefighter back in your day. I mean, every day you got heat, you got problems.
No, absolutely. In fact, my wife and I were just down in Florida about a week and a half ago for a week, and it's humid. But I am in Las Vegas, and so we
Oh, you got your own kind of heat.
Yeah, we can talk about heat on a different level.
That's true. That's true. I've been in Las Vegas many times. Actually, just a great city to be in.
Yes.
And stuff. Now, Jeff, that's not where you were a firefighter, though, right?
No, I did my fire time in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. I'm originally born and raised in Rochester, New York, and after high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do with life. And
I'm a Syracuse guy, so I'm like,
are you? Okay.
Oh yeah, we're brothers, man.
You're an orange then, huh?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you probably worked for Kodak at one time.
No. I was 18 when I left, and I didn't want to work for Kodak, even though my dad worked and retired from there. I just didn't want to be. I knew I was not that factory person. I needed to be out and about, and I didn't want to go to school. I thought I'd be playing for the left field for the Red Sox, and baseball didn't turn out as I had hoped to. So I moved to Chicago, where my dad's brother, my uncle, lived, and about 4 months after I moved there, I met my future bride, and a year later we were married in 1980, and we'll be celebrating 44 years in November, and the things that we've done, especially in my career, I've done a lot of things. I was always looking. I was a broadcaster, part-time broadcaster for a radio station. I used to cover the Chicago Bulls. I used to interview Michael Jordan. I worked for a minor league team for the Baltimore Orioles out in the Chicagoland area. So I always had this, there's something else out there for me. And when we built our house in Gilbert's, Illinois, that's when I joined Rutland Dundee Fire Department as a volunteer. And it was then that I knew this is what I wanted to do. They sent me through EMT and paramedic class, of course, the academy. I moved up to a lieutenant. And then in 95, I went career with Palatine Rural Fire Protection District. And I was an officer about 23 out of 26 years of my career. And I retired in 2015. And, we moved to Phoenix where our daughters and grandkids lived. And there's just so many things we've done in regard to FBHA And we continue to do it. But now I'm currently the behavioral health administrator for Las Vegas Fire and Rescue, and I travel speaking FBHA engagements during the week or on the weekends. So we keep very, very busy.
Now, FBHA, Firefighter Behavioral Health Alliance, which is something that you and your wife started.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
And it all actually started due to Hurricane Katrina in 2005. I
uh,
was a battalion chief at the time, and there were a lot of Division One outside Chicago sent down numerous firefighters, including a couple from our department. They went down to New Orleans, and when they came back, they showed me videos and pictures of the horrific things. They were picking up bodies in the streets, and so they wanted help. But you know, the EAP programs, as you know, and behavioral health wasn't really discussed in 2005, and they were good people, are the behavior the EAPs, but like I said, they weren't trained into what our culture was. So that's when I decided in 2006 to go back get my master's degree, and I graduated in 2009 with my uh, license as a counselor, my master's, and became a licensed counselor. And we actually founded counseling services for firefighters in 2009. We were training counselors and chaplains across the U.S. Hey, you want to work with us? You need to understand us. We're a little different. Not that it's wrong from my point of view, but we're a little different. When in early 2010, I started receiving emails and phone calls from all over the world saying, "Do you do anything about firefighter suicides?" I said, "Matt, I didn't know we had a problem.
right.
No one ever talked about those things, in all my 20 years at that time." And so I did a lot of research and found there's some numbers here. And so that's later in June of 2010, my wife and I developed Firefighter Behavior Health Alliance as a 501c3. And our first four workshops ever, our workshop was called Saving Those Who Save Others. That's our tagline on our challenge coins, was for the Philadelphia Fire Department. And I'll never forget walking in to about 100 Philly firefighters and said, "We'll be talking about PTS and suicide awareness." I'd never seen so many people shift in the seats before in my life, because this is uncomfortable territory.
And when was that you were there?
December of 2011.
2011. Okay. All right.
Yep, we did four workshops for them, and we haven't looked back. I've traveled over 1,000,000 miles in the last 10, 11 years, speaking all over the United States and Canada on this. And of course, tracking and validating the fire and EMS suicides as well.
Wow. Wow. There's so much there. And, it's funny because you ended up in my second home, which was Philadelphia.
Oh,
From
yes, yeah.
Syracuse, I went down to South Jersey and I did TV and radio in Philly for years.
Excellent. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love the city because I'm a Revolutionary War buff, and so I love
Perfect.
that street that they have down there in Philadelphia that's still from the colonial times.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And of course,
It's so cool. And you can't beat the food in Philly. Come on. I
no,
mean,
we went to Geno's, if I'm allowed to plug Philly steaks.
yeah, why not? It's
But
Geno's or Pat's. You got to decide
yeah,
which one's
I
yours.
didn't get
Either
the
one's
Pat's.
good.
But
Either
they
one's
go to Geno's, and oh man, I love Italian beef, and you
Oh,
can't go wrong there.
absolutely. So let's unpack some of this stuff.
Okay.
Let's take us back to 1990 and the first couple of years of volunteerism, then becoming career and going into it. It was a different community in the firehouse then, wasn't it? There was still a lot of the, kind of suck it up, buttercup, and let's have a drink after work to deal with what happened. And was that still kind of that machoism that was running the show?
No, absolutely. In fact, I was probably why I know I was the instigator in getting beer out of the firehouse in the volunteer department. And it wasn't uncommon back then. The volunteer departments had their social halls and their taps, their beer taps, and after training, they'd order a pizza, and then certain amount of people said, "Hey, I won't drink because in case we get a call," but the others would have beers, and I'm not a drinker, so I don't know if that really kind of made people think, "Oh, what is he, godlike?" But it's just, I didn't think it was appropriate as first responders helping out your communities that there was alcohol in the firehouses. And so, and that's how it was all the way up. And then when I went career as well, I mean, there was no alcohol in the career stations, but it was, you don't talk about anything. You don't talk about family. You don't talk about emotions, and any tough calls that came along. It was just, hey, you keep it to yourself. And you were told that you walk in that door for the next 24 hours, you're ours. We don't want to hear about anything going on at home. And that's a struggle for many because they want to talk. They want to hear things that or express what's going on and get some opinions from other people. So it was difficult times back then, and especially like I said, when we founded in FBHA in 2010, we got beat up. I still have emails that we have kept saying, suicides. You're making up the numbers, and PTS. That's a military thing. What are you trying to do here? So it was difficult times back then.
Absolutely. I mean, you're talking about generational system that went on for a long time, and the improvements in the services as far as the equipment and everything else progressed, but it was still a lot of the same cultural thinking that went on.
No,
It didn't change for many, many, many years. So you coming up even after something like 9/11, where everybody thought, "Hey, now we all woke up." That was a very slow wake up. It was. We started to see the effects and we started to see the issues, but it took a long time for that to take root. It wasn't like 2001 we had this happen and then 2002 we started working on mental health. It took a long time, didn't it?
no, it did. And at that moment in 2001, after 9/11, you couldn't do wrong as a fire service. And how long did it take before long people were turning on fire departments for budgets and funding and things? People tend to forget. So, when you start talking about the emotions aspects of the first responders, and you have to understand though, I mean, we've only been talking about behavioral health for us at FBHA for 14 years or so, and the fire service has been around since Ben Franklin. So
Yeah.
we have a long ways to go. Have we come a long ways? Absolutely, we have. But there's still so many things that we need to learn and try to associate for every department. As you know, 72% of firefighters are volunteers, and there's a lot of missed out people out there that are doing great work, either volunteering or being paid, that haven't heard about our message, our educational message, and I think that's something that we're trying to overcome. But it's also difficult because, like you, I heard your opening. There's not a lot of funding or donations, especially when you talk about behavioral health and suicide.
Yeah.
And so it's very limited in that aspect of it. So, but we just try to do what the good Lord gives us and do what we can with it. And, I
That was, you also, I mean, there were so many changes that happened during this period of time. We
Mhm.
saw a lot more diverse cultures coming into the fire department. We
Right.
saw a lot more women coming into the fire department. We saw, over the last, 30 years, we'll say. And as behavioral health slowly started to gain, you're dealing with all this, even the simple things we mentioned beforehand, the electronics in the fire department. Whereas when you used to get back to the fire department, it was you and the guys. It was you. Now it's I get back and I get on and I'm doing my banking. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I'm talking to kids. I'm on Facebook or playing, and it's not quite the same. So were some of those things kind of barriers to focusing on some of the issues
Well, they
or
absolutely are.
distractions? I should say, not a barrier, but a distraction.
Yeah, no, they absolutely are because many of us, as the economy hit some rough times, they're working part-time jobs or maybe full-time jobs elsewhere. So they're on their down times at the firehouse. They're working on those things. They're working with their families if their children are having some difficulties at home, and so they're constantly worried about those things. Uh, you know, it's just amazing when I start thinking about when we look at our data and the things that we found. And you mentioned females in the fire service. Let me just give you one particular thing. We talk about cultural brainwashing, and it's a phrase I coined many years ago. And that means when we put this uniform on, we're expected to act in a certain manner. that brave, strong, don't show any weakness, give help and things. Well, this plays out when we start looking at our data, especially in regard to methods that our first responders, fire, EMS, and dispatchers have taken their lives. We know in society that the number one known method for males is firearms, and for females, it's overdose. But in our data, by almost a 2-to-1 uh, measure, is that for females, their way of taking their lives is firearms. And it just makes me wonder about that cultural brainwashing that they go on these calls and they see they're 99.999% effective, but also there's only about 7% are females. And so now they're working in a male dominant career. So not only are they working in that aspect, but are they also dying in the same aspect by using firearms? And so it's hard for me to make that statement and say, this is exactly it. But I go to my data, and my data shows that our females are taking their lives by a 2-to-1 by firearm. And so these are the things that we try to learn and try to educate our brothers and sisters. And in 2010, there weren't the ton of organizations that are out there on Facebook now for first responders,
Right.
regarding resiliency and prevention and things like this. And so, it takes numerous organizations like One Brother, One Sister to work together to help out our brothers and sisters. And so these difficulties are challenging for every organization in regard to saving lives. And so, like I said, the competition. If I'm a fire chief and I say, "Hey, I want to bring some education training into our organization," well, who do you go with? I mean, because there are so many different organizations. I wish there
Right.
could be one unified training that everyone agreed upon. But what makes us different at FBHA is that not only the data collecting that everyone uses across the nation, but also 90% of all our workshops, and we have 12 of them now, they come from our brothers and sisters. They're not things I pull off the internet, because I've traveled so many and I've visited thousands and thousands. And we learned so much in 2017, my wife and I, when we traveled by truck and camper across the US for over a year. We put on over 40,000 miles visiting fire stations, and then we would do workshops at different places. But in between, we'd stop at volunteer, we'd stop at EMS, dispatch, and just, hey, this is who we are. How's things going? And people would open up to us. And we stopped at wildland fire stations out there, and their whole areas were just burnt. And they never met us before, and they'd stand in front of my wife and I in tears, saying, "This is what we see every
Wow.
day when we come to work." And it's just amazing what's out there and the way that our brothers and sisters are struggling.
And there's, I had always thought when we first got involved with fire and rescue, although I've always had great respect for all first responders and our military people. I really had no idea that there was not a giant connecting thread between everybody. There's a lot of fragmentation. I happen to, there's some very affluent communities here that have very well funded, extremely well trained, and top of the line everything fire departments. But I know that's not the case all over the place. And there's no set standards for a lot of things, especially when it comes to mental health and behavioral health. I got excited when we saw CISM come up with critical incident management
Right.
and peer support. But again, that is still fragmented in its training, and it's in its infancy. And it's like training one person to use the jaws of life in the whole department. That doesn't make any sense. Everyone should have this information and be able to help each other. Am I barking up the wrong tree here, Jeff, or am I in the right
No,
direction?
not at all. Is because it exploded so quickly. Everyone wanted to start their own organization and things, and they're doing great work. It's just that it became overwhelming. And I think what we're starting to see is that, especially at large conferences, where 4 or 5 years ago you would see a lot of speakers on behavioral health, you don't see those things anymore. And I think it's become overwhelming. And I just wrote an article, and it'll be in a magazine in the International Fire and Safety Journal. it's called complacency kills.
Mm.
We were always taught that, when you go in on a car fire or a false alarm, make sure you got your mask on. Well, we can't be complacent though in behavioral health, because I will tell you that in 2024 here, our numbers are going to be past 100 of fire, EMS, and dispatcher suicides, and we were below that last year. So we're seeing an increase this year, and we can't be complacent. Even if you're a volunteer department, if it's just what are the resources, what are the vetted counselors, what are the inpatient, the outpatient facilities that we can provide. You might not have the counselor on staff and all those things, but the need to have resources is absolutely incredible. And we consult, FBHA consults with the National Volunteer Fire Council, and we've actually helped them with their behavioral health directory. And I have vetted over 800 counselors across the United States, and some didn't make it because being a licensed counselor and this many years in the fire service, I know both sides of the wall, so I know what questions to ask. And
Yeah.
so these are the challenges that we're facing. Insurances, how some of these, I would say, not as large organizations, maybe the volunteers, they don't have the great benefits that cover behavioral health. Or if they do, there's not anyone in their area that
Yeah.
belongs to that plan. So they're reaching out, they're looking for help, and FBHA, we give a grant. American Ambulance Association gives a grant for their EMS people, but there's not a lot of help when they're reaching out, and their insurance coverage doesn't cover those things, or it doesn't have a counselor in the area. So it's a struggle that we're all seeing because it exploded here in the behavioral health realm.
Some people may shake their head because they know that you can't spit in the sidewalk without hitting a therapist. In some places, there's so many therapists out there and so many things, but to have one that's qualified to work with somebody, whether it's an active combat vet, whether it's a police officer or a firefighter, because so many, if you're not trained or vetted properly, the best counselors can get wrapped up in the story and forget about the feeling. I want to hear about the fire and the body and the thing, and then it's we have no frame of reference to work with that. And so for us, it's like watching or listening to a movie, and we never get to the feelings. So you need somebody who's very, very well trained for that. Is that something that your organization is concerned with, is making sure the right people help the right people?
Oh, absolutely. We get numerous calls a week from firefighters or EMS dispatchers looking for help. So if I don't have anyone in that area, then I personally call, and I do it for free. I vet 3 or 4 counselors and say, hey, you know what? I would go to these 2. So then I would call that firefighter back and say, here's 2. Call them, see which one fits for you. And that's what we're trying to do. But the downside of this explosion is that so many first responders are seeking counseling, and those counselors that have been vetted are now being overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And they don't have enough slots per week to take on. So that's why we try to implore and impress onto counselors, hey, get some educational training, understand what the world is like. And you don't have to know every term and things like this, but
Sure.
if you've worked with military, guess what? Fire service is a paramilitary system. If you worked with wildland firefighters, they have different challenges. When we track suicides, it is volunteer and career fire. It is military fire. I've spoken at a lot of Air Force bases. I even had the pleasure, I was invited and I spoke at the Pentagon, which was truly an amazing thing for me in my FBHA life.
That's amazing.
And we track EMS, and then we also track dispatchers. And if you've never sat in on dispatchers here in Vegas, they handle over 700,000 calls a year. And it is stressful. It's very overwhelming. And so taking care of our dispatchers is one of our priorities as well. And then we also help out families. We hold an annual weekend retreat for family survivors. It'll be our 10th one coming up in May. And I will tell you, Scott, they are some of the bravest people I've ever met in my life. They open up their hearts to new families. We give names so that they can bond with each other, and
Mm.
because and they share one theme in common, and that was a loved one took their life that was a first responder. So we try to run the gamut on all of this aspect of also plus learning more and more. We came out last year with a white paper on moral injury, and I'm a firm believer moral injury plays a larger role than post traumatic stress in the first responder world. So we're constantly learning, but we're learning from our brothers and sisters as well.
I I want to touch on a couple of things very quickly that you said. One, it was very important, and a lot of people forget about the dispatch. That's kind of that thing that they don't think about. They see the paramedics, the EMTs, the firefighters, and some of the other peripherals that you might see on scene, or that jump up in the air when the bell rings, and slide down a pole. That's what we think about. But the dispatchers, everything that happens to the firefighters first goes through them.
Right.
And what are the particular challenges with that? I'm going to make an assumption that they don't, they get the trauma right at the beginning, but no closure. So that's got to be hard.
And you took the words right out of my mouth. We go on these first responder calls. I was a medic for many years. We know of a full arrest or a child drowning or a structure fire. We see the closure on that. It's there, but they don't. They go on these children drowning, shootings, self-inflicted, or vehicle accidents, and then they move on to the next call. And
Yeah,
so,
within seconds sometimes, right?
absolutely, absolutely. So they don't get that closure, and I liken it to this, Scott. I don't know if you have children, but imagine you have children, and the first time they drive, you throw them the keys and say, "Okay, I'll see you at 10." And then you look down and it's 10 o'clock, and your mind is now starting to race, right?
Yeah.
What's going on here? What's going on? And as each minute goes by, your first thought is not, "Oh, my little Johnny, he must be out there changing a flat tire of some old lady. What a good Samaritan." Right? And so,
Right.
oh, they're in an accident, or they're drunk, or something. The police have held them. And as each moment goes by, that anxiety builds, builds, builds. Well, that's what they go through. They need that closure. They want to understand, did I do a great job on that call? Did I assist? Did I help out? And so, we try to always impress on the officers that please call them up, give them closure. So that's a key factor when you're working with dispatch. And of course, the other one is that not a lot of people, like you said, think about them, and they are a vital role for us. They feed us the information as we're arriving on the scenes. They help with emergency medical directions on CPRs, childbirth, and things. So it's something I take to heart. I love our dispatchers across the U.S. And unfortunately, in the last month or so, we've lost 2 dispatchers across the United States to suicide. So they battle the issues just as well as our EMS and first responders, our police officers.
Now, again, we are seeing some positive changes within departments and within districts where they are paying a little more attention to the mental health of their people. Are the dispatch included in that when they're doing these things, or I mean, does the department actually make sure that they're taken care of as well as the guys on the trucks?
Well, I would hope so, especially wherever we teach, or we help create behavioral health programs for organizations, and in that is always the dispatchers. You
Absolutely.
need to take care of everyone involved in those calls. If there is a really horrific call, bring them in for uh, the crisis debriefing. Keep them included as well. And so that's one of the things that we absolutely try to strive in educating departments is, hey, you know what? When we come out to speak, bring your mayor, your town supervisors, your dispatch, your nurses, anyone that's involved with any type of crisis, bring it out. Yes, our data is only fire, EMS, and dispatchers, but our message from across the U.S. from our brothers and sisters, it applies to everyone.
We've had the absolute joy of working with emergency management teams as well,
Mhm.
with one brother, one sister, and to, realize that, these people are only in when it's really bad. You
Right.
talk about the community, And so we like to make sure that they also have the tools so that when those times come, they know what to do. I got to ask you, Jeff, you're so passionate about this, and I want to know more about your company, but why you? Why you? You're a kid out of Rochester. You go out on your own. I know you fell in love with firefighting, but why this cause? Was there something personal with you and your wife that said, we have to do this?
I will tell you, I ask that question of myself all the time. I I never lost any family member to suicide, never lost a friend to suicide. I saw it on the job. I've lost well over 20 people that I've come to know doing this through FBHA. And the only thing I can come to is that this was the path chosen to me by the good Lord. That's the only message that uh, reiterates time and time again. I was chosen to do this, and I'm not saying I'm special. It's just that I saw a need, and I saw the people that were struggling, especially the families. And I told my wife, I said, we have to do something, whatever large amount, whatever small amount, we have to do something. And it is by the strength of the good Lord that I am able to handle this, because you can't, and I'm saying I shouldn't say everyone, but it's difficult to hear over 2,050 stories of people that have taken their lives, and helping the the thousands that have called us over the last 14, 15 years looking for help, to hear their stories. And but I will tell you, we are very humbled. You won't see on our Facebook pages or our posts on our website sites, you won't see us say, "Oh, we saved another life." We
Yeah,
did this
yeah,
and this, because that's between me and the good Lord. And the way
yeah.
I look at it is, I'm just trying to get one additional mark when I meet at the pearly gates that gets me through.
I like that, and and I can empathize with what you go through with that. Certainly, working with addictions and alcoholism, drug addiction, um, I would love to say that there's not many weeks that go by that I don't hear about somebody that I'd worked with in the past, because I've been doing this for so long.
Right.
And and sometimes you hit the pillow and it's like, am I even making a difference? But you wake up in the morning and it's like, if I don't get out of bed and do it, who will? So I got to go do it. I assume you have those same moments.
I do, because I'm 63 years old, and how long can I do this, and what's my succession plan for FBHA with the data? Because you know we don't. No one's seen our data except me. That's the promise I give. So what happens is, we get confidential reports early on off our website of a suicide or a possible suicide, and then I call the fire chiefs. And nowadays, because so many people know us, they'll either text me or call me and say, "Hey Jeff, we had a loss, or our neighbor did." But we keep that confidential. We don't use names, we don't use organizations, unless families say, "Hey, please use our loved one to educate others."
Right.
So it's kind of like, like you just said, it's your baby. You
Yeah.
get out of bed because this is what the good Lord has given you, this path. And so who am I to say no and turn it down? But there has to be a time that, because of age or health or whatever, is that I have to train and trust someone to carry that on. Otherwise, all the data goes bye bye.
Yeah.
Because I made promises to chiefs that their names and their departments would never be, spoken of and released. So it's one of the things that my wife and we worry about a lot.
God knows life would be easier if you were just calling baseball games on the radio and I was doing my morning drive time show, right? I mean, life would be a whole lot easier and simpler, but
I'd like to
not
be
as
on the,
rewarding, though. Not as rewarding.
no, it's not. But I'd like to be on the pickleball tournament, tour. With the last name Dill, I mean, I'm bound to play pickleball. So, I
That's
played.
perfect.
I played 12 to 15 hours a week. I get a lot. I get in tournaments and things. So, we all have to have our coping skills and things. So,
Yeah, that's important doing this kind of work. And anybody, whether you're within departments or outside and bringing services in, if you're not practicing good self-care and practicing what you're trying to preach, it will crash and burn very quickly, because you're taking on pain from others.
And that's what I tell people. It might be so different for everyone. I just recently published my first children's book, Pike the Pig, and his blue sled. So and it's had some sales and things, and I got the second and third Pike the Pig on the drawing boards already. So whatever that coping skill is for you, don't worry about what other people say. What helps you get through that day? The stressors, the anxieties or depression, whatever makes you happy and allows you to relax and enjoy life, because it is too short. Life is way too short. So, find that coping skill that allows you to survive each day. And like I said, for me, it's pickleball, travel, and writing my children's book.
I love that. Mine is music and my artwork. You can see behind me. That's I
do.
paint.
I see John Lennon there.
Yeah, yeah. I got John Lennon and Eddie Van Halen over my shoulder. But this is part of my relaxation is to go home and paint and start doing those things. But all right, let's talk about now. You work actively with the department, and what was that role again?
I'm the behavior health administrator.
Okay. Now, is this a role that all departments are starting to adapt as having a behavioral health administrator, or is this something relatively new?
It's relatively new, but there are increase in this type of role and position that we're the go-to. I do not counsel our firefighters. I've always been a firm believer ever since I got my degree that you don't counsel where you work or your family members. And so when I did my job interview in the spring of 21, I laid it right out. So I won't be counseling. I'll find the resources, and that's what we've done. And you're starting to see a lot of the larger cities as well. We're bringing on licensed counselors full time, so that if there's an emergency, we can go to them right away. We don't have to say, "Hey, we call counselor. Well, I can get you in at 4 today." No, we need someone right now. So you're starting to see a lot of the larger organizations have those licensed counselors right there on staff. So all these things are positives as we go along. And but that's why I say even the smaller departments, that you can have your resources. So for us, Jacob Thatcher and myself, he's part of our peer support team. We created a QR code. And within that QR code has all our resources, all our peer support teams, all our chaplains, all our inpatient, our outpatient. It has our library of books that people can come and get from me. And it's right there on a QR code. And we're trying to make access easy for our members. And what's so nice is right here on my computer, whenever there's any updates or changes, I can just go in there and it automatically defaults into the QR code. So these things are, with technology, yes, there's some restrictions, but there's also some great advantages. If a firefighter is at home, but they don't want to contact anyone, they can just go and find those resources that are already vetted and proven for them.
Wow. Wow. It gives me so much hope to see this stuff happening, to see somebody like, you and your wife and the people you work with out there doing this kind of work. And I mean, it could have been really easy to retire and, like I said, just go watch baseball, fish, do whatever you got to do, camp. But you want to keep working. You say, how long can you keep working? I say, as long as you're breathing, there's work to be done.
Right.
But just how much can you do with your knees? That's all. The knees give out, the back hurts. There's so much. But now we've got the FBHA, which is your organization.
Mm-hmm.
When you started it, did it morph into what it became, or was this always your goal, is to work this broadly?
That's a great question, because when I started, with FBHA, we started thinking, well, this PTS and, the behavioral health aspects of it. But then there was just so many different avenues to go down in regard to helping out families, because we were only at the beginning just firefighters and EMS. And then we, start, oh man, military, they need some help. The military firefighters, oh wow, the wildland, and all of a sudden dispatchers, man, working with them. These people need help. And then it started, going into, let's take care of the families. What do we have for an educational program, a scholarship for children? And it was just so many different avenues, and we went on a different one with moral injury. We did a white paper on that last year, and so white paper 2 we're in the middle of on moral injury. So we're going down different avenues as we go, and like I said, we're learning so much, and I think we're learning because our brothers and sisters are talking to us.
Yes.
They're asking for help, and that's where you get the source. People, you can go on the internet, but if you don't talk to the people, and so many people call me up, they'll say, Jeff, I'm a lieutenant for a such and such fire department. My chief wants me to put together a program, suicide awareness PowerPoint program well, what are your recommendations? And I tell them, first off, you have to go out and talk to the people. You have to see what's in your department, what those people are dealing with. And if you don't do that, then you're just copying stuff off the internet, and people will see through that in a heartbeat nowadays.
It's different. You go to a firehouse in the middle of Montana, and then you end up in a firehouse in the middle of downtown St. Louis. These are two different animals, different cultures, and different information. And you need to, if you don't cater to that, you're going to miss most of the people you talk to, right?
Absolutely. And what you learn from that is you can become very sterile if you're just pulling stuff off the internet. When you talk to people, you can feel those emotions and you can pass on those emotions. And as you probably can tell, I get very passionate when I speak, because I've heard these stories. I've seen the losses. I've hugged the families, and that's what you learn when you get involved with the families. Now you have to be careful, and I've been talking about this for years. Peer support really started picking up in 2014 when Illinois started the peer support training. Two good friends of mine, and they trained over 200 firefighters across the state of Illinois.
Yeah, I think I know one of them. We've worked with him before.
And then,
Tom Howard.
I know Tom. He wasn't. He wasn't the original founder.
Yeah.
Then the IFF started in 2016, and then there was other ones come along, and I kept on telling people. And I put it in our policies, our templates. We have a lot of templates that we give away for free that make sure you're taking care. If you're on a peer support team, you can't mandate it, but I highly recommend it that they go see a counselor once or twice a year. And if you're not doing that, that's a problem, because we started noticing in about 2019, 2020, we started seeing more and more peer support team members or leaders on our suicides. And not only are you going on those calls and you have issues within your own personal life, now you're absorbing it from your brothers and sisters, and it becomes overwhelming. And the one thing I tell these peer support team members, you have to know yourself. There's a difference between having empathy and being an empath.
That's right.
My wife is an empath. I have empathy. I can help you out, but I can also disassociate. Where an empath, they absorb that pain. They absorb those people's problems. And if you're an empath as a peer support team member and you're pretty active, you really need to be watching out for yourself and taking care of yourself.
What a great point. I work with a lot of therapists, a lot of counselors working within the mental health and the addiction industry. Two reasons people become a counselor. One is because they've struggled or had issues, learned how to take care of themselves, and want to share that with others.
Mm-hmm.
The other reason is because they're a mess themselves, don't know what to do, so they figure they'll just help others. And that's where we have that problem. A lot of people who want to have they have the best intentions to help people.
Absolutely.
But they're trying to help others so that they can feel good about themselves. That's not the reason. You've got to go take care of yourself first. No. And then you can help others. And I agree with you. I think that should be standard, is that peer support, anybody who gets involved in this kind of work, behavioral health work with anybody, should be taking care of themselves almost mandatorily. But but that's important. I want to bring up something you brought this up a couple of times. We got a little bit of time, a little bit. You keep saying moral injury, and I think this is a term. It sounds like a term that's probably something you came up with, which I like. But
no, it's not. It was actually a gentleman, a doctor, who came up with it in dealing with our military. And so
Okay.
when I started doing a lot of research, I had two firefighters out here who came to me and said, Jeff, have you heard moral injury? And I started doing a lot of research. And what it is in its basic component is moral injury is the belief that as human beings, we're born to help others. We want to do good. Then you get into the first responder world, fire, EMS, and you're trained to save lives. Well, in reality, Scott, and over the last year, whenever I spoke, I did an informal. Our actual save rate is probably around 5%. Because by the time you get there for the suicide, the drowning, the full arrest, the vehicle accident, that person has passed away. So now you start feeling helpless. And one of the key aspects of moral injury is betrayal. Betrayal by management. Hey, you know what? I didn't get the vaccine, so now you're firing me. Or betrayal, you promised us more help. We're working so much overtime. Betrayal by others. Maybe it's promotional time, and all of a sudden everyone's stabbing each other in the back because they're trying to get the top spot. Or betrayal by ourselves. We know that the divorce rate's about 60 to 65% in the first responder world. Is it because we went out and did something that caused our loved one to want to divorce if they had an affair, or maybe the way we treat them with our anger and things? So now you feel betrayed by your loved one. They don't want to be with you. See, where PTSD is trauma-based, fear-based, moral injury hits right here, your emotions of guilt and embarrassment, shame. All those things hit home there. And what we found is why I did the white paper is that the number one known reason in our data, unknown is number one when I contact the chiefs or the families, but the number one known reason by far is relationships, whether work relationships or personal relationships. And that speaks right to moral injury. And also, we see that in retirement, because when we interviewed retirees, the top three issues were loss of identity, loss of belonging, and lack of purpose. And those speak to moral injury. So it's imperative that organizations have a retirement program. So this moral injury, when I contacted the military, because they'd been doing studies on it for years, they said you can have both. You can have PTSD and moral injury at the same time. And that then made me look at my data, and I found over 40 of our brothers and sisters who went into inpatient facilities for PTSD, addictions, or depression. And when they came out, they still ended up killing themselves. And my thought was just the PTS addressed, or the depression, but not the moral injury. And so the military, when I asked them, they said when they looked at their data, they found more suicides were contributed to moral injury than PTSD. And one of our second white paper coming out is the ability for treatment. And we know, and it's basic, I'm just being basic because I know we're short on time, but the ability to forgive is a key aspect of moral injury. And that's easier said than done, right?
It sounds like just such a direct attack on our humanness,
Right.
On who we are. That's I'm going to have to do some more studying into that too. You've lit me up on something, brother, and I appreciate it, man.
You can go to our webpage,
Yeah.
ffbha.org. And on the front page, if you scroll down, you can download the white paper for free.
Excellent.
We want people to know about this. We want families to know about it. We want counselors, peer support teams to know about it.
So that's ffbha.org. That's
Right.
for Firefighter Behavioral Health Alliance, ffbha.org. I'll put it in the comments when the show airs, and that way you guys will all have it if you want to find out more about the good work that's going on with Jeff and his wife. What is your wife's name?
Karen.
Karen.
Karen with a K. Karen. She's my
Karen,
bride.
I'm going to give you a lot of credit. I mean, although 44 years, it sounds like you got a good guy. So this all is working out good. You guys are, I'm just so proud of the work that you guys are doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Those are
and I'm glad it's going on. Considering you've been involved since 1990 with firefighters, And so now, what is that?
34 years.
34 years ago.
Mhm.
What is the most significant positive change you've seen in these 34 years in firefighters?
I would I'll give you two things.
Okay.
One,
All right.
one individually and one overall. I have seen such an increase in our brothers and sisters in wanting to listen to others who are dealing with behavioral health issues, and with those people then opening up and talking and seeking help. It's tremendous. Do we have a long ways to go? Absolutely. But we're seeing those, and it's such a great positive, as well as the amount of counselors that are understanding our world. Those numbers have dramatically increased. For me personally, I think the number one thing that I've learned is that I don't judge people,
Mm.
because I do not know where they come from, what they struggled with, and who am I to judge on whatever they do. So it's and that's been very beneficial for me, is not to judge others.
And it's I love your answer on that. And the stigma has changed. Um, although getting everybody to understand it's changed is hard.
Right.
Individually, you still think stigma's out. It's really not out there. I mean, listen, between you and me, you can't get a decent Hollywood movie until you've gone through at least 2 rehabs.
Right.
You cannot star in a film. It's become a standard that people get sick and they get better, and they get hurt and they get better. And um, but we're still not, as individuals, accepting that. And I would really love to see more open conversations. I think it starts in families, it starts in high schools. We're talking about what healthy mental health is, the difference between feeling sad and feeling depressed, and understanding that stuff. I think we've got a long way to go as well, brother.
Right.
If you could magically make something happen in the next 10 years, what would you like to see happen?
Well, I believe it is important that we start young. We have a program called Keeping Tabs, and TABS stands for Together Against Bullying and Suicide, and that's for our school kids. So
Wow.
it is. We need to start earlier in life, because this is what we're talking about. I want everyone to have a great career in the fire service, EMS, dispatch world, police world. I want you to have a great career, but I want you to have a better retirement. And,
Yeah.
and that's where you start educating people and understanding that it's okay if I need to reach out. I tell people, push pride to the side. And that's our greatest attribute as human beings, is to reach out and say, I need some help. So,
Wow. I would love to get together. I've got some people here. Kenny Church. I'm not sure if you're familiar
I
with
know Kenny. I know
You
Kenny.
know
Really
Kenny.
well.
All
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Beautiful. I got a couple of people I'd love to get together for a panel. And what I really want to focus on is retirement, because of that, the uniform identity and the things like that that have to be dealt with. That is something that we can unpack, and it could take a while. And it could be very useful to all first responders and military people. When you wear a uniform and you take it off, there's something lost there. And I think we really want to speak to the mental health on that. I'm asking you if you would love to be a part of that.
No, absolutely. Because I created a workshop called "Saying Goodbye: The Emotional, Detachment," and it's real. It's absolutely real. And our data, over 10% of our retirees took their lives in the first week of retirement. So
The first week?
first week of retirement, over 10%.
So
That's a
that had to be building up even before they left. That had to be
absolutely.
like that terror.
That, hey, oh my gosh, my 32
Wow.
years is done, what do I do now? And so that anxiety and stress. So I would love to be a part of that panel.
That's absolutely. You're my number one on there. That would be awesome, and I'll let you know. We'll put that together soon, because there's so much messaging we want to get out there. And you and I think we just touched the tip of the iceberg today, but I'm sure you and I will get together and have more discussions in the future. Once again, I applaud your mission. I applaud the energy that you put into it, and just how driven you are.
I appreciate that. And,
Uh,
like I said,
any
we're
any
all
regrets, my friend? Any regrets?
no, none whatsoever. We're all
Excellent.
on the same team here. One brother, one sister, helping out. We need to be working together on these issues. So it's just not one organization is going to handle all these.
Yeah, I think if people are trying to hoard all the stuff to themselves, we need to share it in a network. There's so much work to be done. We need to network together to help each other to get this work done, help as many people as possible. And if answering that phone at 3 a.m. is the difference between somebody living or dying, we got to keep doing that as well.
Right.
Although I'm not inviting people to call me at 3 a.m. I'm not inviting you to do that. But if you have to, I will answer.
Well, over the last couple of years, we had the suicide hotline call us and say, "Hey, we have a firefighter online, and we've been directed to contact you." So I said, "Okay." Well, I didn't know we were in that agreement, but absolutely, absolutely, we were on.
If you weren't stressed enough, you have to invite the entire nation to, hey, let's call Jeff.
Yeah. So, but you know, like I said, I'm honored to be here on your show today, and thank you so very much for bringing our world to your world.
Well, and again, I appreciate even just being a part of what you guys do in even a small way. It makes me feel good. You guys have been the backbones of our communities, the protectors of our communities, the heart and soul, really, and it's time for us to start thinking in the other way is what can we do for you guys too. And I just like to see more and more people get involved like that. Let's change some perceptions and ideas. Like I said, Emergency is not the show you want to learn about firefighters from, because although it was a great show, it ain't everything.
No, you're right. You're right. But
all right.
Quick story, if you don't mind.
Please.
Quick story. I was in Lincoln, Nebraska a few years ago and doing a workshop. And afterwards, a young female firefighter came up to me, young. I mean, I'm 63, so everyone's young to me. But she says, "I've been following you and your wife ever since you founded FBHA." And she says, I consider you the grandfather of the movement, behavioral health in the fire service. And I just turned to her. I said, "Well, why can't I be the father?" I've never seen anyone turn so red in my life. I said, "Well, I'm just teasing with you, And so it's those type of things that keep you going. The people who appreciate just a little note. We've had children send us notes and families saying thank you, and but like I said, that stays between my wife and I. But I love sharing that story because it's a slant against my age.
You don't feel it until somebody actually walks up and points it out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, but
second, I just turned 58, and the shame is, all of last year I thought I was 56.
Oh, geez.
And when I came to my birthday, it was my mother who actually called to remind me that I was turning 58, not 57. I never even got to be 57, but I was 56 twice. So I'm okay with it.
Well, I tell people, I always say it. I said, it's better to be over the hill than under it.
That's correct.
My wife and I are very positive people. So we keep, just keep on going along.
Well, I appreciate you. I know that sometime towards the end of the year, I'm going to be out in Vegas. I'll give you a call. We'll do some lunch or something. And next time you're in Florida, we're down in Fort Lauderdale area. Just let us know, man. We'll do some dinner.
Sounds good.
But I'm sure we'll be talking a lot between now and then. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, Jeff Dill, CEO and founder of a Firefighter Behavioral Health Alliance. If you want to know more about what they do, ffbha.org. Please check it out. And also, as I keep reminding you over and over again, you see a police officer, you see a firefighter, you see an EMT, a paramedic. If you know any dispatch people, thank them for the work that they do. Thank them for their service, because every day they go in there, and although they enjoy their jobs and they love what they do, they're doing it for us, and we need to appreciate that. And they never, ever, ever turn down fresh baked cookies. Bring some over to that's a true story, right? You guys don't turn down baked goods.
Peanut butter cookies. So
peanut butter are the best.
Find our address and send peanut butter cookies to me. No.
Jeff, thank you very much.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it.
All of you out there, thank you once again for spending time with us watching Firehouse Table Talk. Don't forget to check out onebrother1sister.com. Make a donation so we continue to bring our services to our good people, our first responders, and our veterans. And don't forget to like and share this with your friends. We will catch you next time. Bye-bye now.
Take care.